The reason we've asked them here today is to talk to us about both their organizations, their journey as they became leaders of their organizations, and give us some hints as to what it's like to be a leader in Ghana as well as in the United States for both of them. The folks we have here, Raphael Tyson is the chairman of Kingsbridge Corporate Services Limited, and they do microfinance in Ghana as well as a number of other services, and I'll let him explain those a little bit more for you. He attended Burlington College and then also worked with J.P. Morgan as an EMEA analyst right here in the United States before starting this, and I know his journey to putting Kingsbridge on the map is an interesting one. Next we have Emmanuel Akorli, and next to him, Dave Ketchum, who represent Mission Resource International, who do a variety of things to encourage entrepreneurship in Ghana and to encourage business development in Ghana. And I'll let them talk a little bit more about their mission. It's, I think it's a wonderful organization. And then on the end we have James Kofi Annan, and he's the founder and executive director of Challenging Heights, which is an anti-trafficking organization in Ghana. And I'm going to read this just to make sure I get it right. James is uniquely qualified for his position as he himself is a survivor of child slavery. James worked as a child fisherman in more than 20 villages along Lake Volta from the age of 6 to 13 before finally escaping. And he has helped develop an organization that helps save children and rehabilitate them from that kind of treatment. So I'm going to start with Raphael, and he's going to tell you about himself. We're going to break this into two sections, basically. Each person on the panel is going to talk about their organization and about themselves a little bit, and then at the end we're going to be asking questions. Okay? Great. Raphael?
Hi, everyone. I'm Raphael Tyson with Kingsbridge Corporate Services Limited, based out of Accra, Ghana. Kingsbridge is tasked with the responsibility of accessing and facilitating small loans to small businesses, individuals, and recently tertiary students in Ghana. Kingsbridge was started 5 years ago with, as Mr. Schlegel said, very small capital, and over 5 years we've grown over fivefold. It's doing very well, and we are very happy to not only be growing as a company, but also impacting the Ghanaian community, especially the underserved community. So with that said, a little bit about me. I actually, as he said, I came to school here. After school, or whilst in school, I work in mortgage-backed securities in the mortgage banking world for about 8 years. And then I transitioned into investment banking with J.P. Morgan, which I did for about six more years. Whilst in J.P. Morgan, I put my resources by way of brains and a little bit of money together to start Kingsbridge. And the rationale behind starting Kingsbridge was to, go back and give back to my folks who are living the life I lived before, moving or, coming to the United States. And so far, we started with, our first 5 clients in 2005. As we speak, we are inching up on our 1,500 clients. And a little bit about microfinance. I'm sure some of you may have not only read about it, but some of you may also be practicing microfinance as well. Microfinance actually, obviously have a potential, I would say, PR recognition with the help of a gentleman by the name of Mohammed Yunus, who studied out here as well, but ended up taking his trade to Bangladesh. And by his grace and his intellect and expertise, he was able to give microfinance a place on the map among financial institutions. in my case, I was just looking to help my fellow Ghanaians and possibly extend my outreach to Africans who will need the help we're offering. And we started small. I'm not sure even if I should go into how it was started, but I might give you a little bit of it. Whilst in JP Morgan, doing EMEA as we call it in the investment banking world, I learned how money moves across the pond between United States, Asia, Europe, New York, anywhere, any corner of the globe. And studying, how that process worked, I decided that, I could apply the same strategy, but on a much smaller scale within the, the Ghanaian community. So there came, the idea to start by, going through the microfinance operations and, the microfinance world. I was raised very poor, literally, I should say, very poor. And I know in Ghana there are folks who are living the life I lived before coming to the United States, where, there's a great deal of need. In previous years, a lot of folks from the Western world tend to see Africans as folks who are looking for handouts. And I will have my brothers, Emmanuel and Dave, expand on that. But lately, it has turned to a point where Africans are looking to be challenged. Africans are looking, more or less, to buy back their self-confidence. So it's no more about the handout approach, but more or less integrating them into the commerce or the commercial world and the way things are done, not only in Ghana, but just like how it's done in the United States as well. And the reason why I say this is because if you look at the world or the globe as a whole lately, thanks to computers, it has become much smaller than it used to be 20, 25, 30 years ago, which tells you that, Africans are also getting more and more integrated into the global economy, especially as an emerging country or emerging in the world. So we are not only looking for handouts, or for the Western world to, look at just helping us and have a brick wall or a ceiling as to how much they can do, but rather being a partner in the global forum in helping to build a global economy. And, with our rich resources, we then seek, partnering with folks like yourself who are going to go out in the real world to do things that will not only benefit Africa, but benefit United States, Asia, Europe, the world as a whole. So that's, in brief, that's the idea behind Kingsbridge and what we are doing. And that's why we don't only call ourselves, Kingsbridge Microfinance, but Corporate Services Limited, where we are doing a job that encompasses the whole, global economy.
What's your biggest challenge to get Kingsbridge?
My biggest challenge to get Kingsbridge started, stems from looking for funding. In the beginning, when I started coining the idea of going into this arena, it took me a while actually. Number one, doing business across the pond in Africa requires certain, attributes that you have to bring into the whole equation. One, I would say, is, getting the right partners in getting a business to start. And that alone in Africa, especially being that we in the United States, usually I can, say, get in touch with Mr. Schlegel, and just on paper, we'll be able to translate my expectation of our business plan or our business goal point. And he will, just be able to latch on and move forward. And it doesn't matter who he is, there is some mechanisms within the United States in place for me not to worry about the trust level, in detail. In Africa, it's a different story. or in Ghana, it's a different story, where partnership requires that you should really know your partner or your players involved in forming or forging this, setup. And a good example would be my case where, my partner was someone I literally grew up with. I knew him right when we were like, 5 years old. Well enough to know how he will, be trustworthy enough in doing a business that involves money. And whilst I was working here, he was also, getting his MBA in UK. And after his MBA, he was going to work in the traditional banking sector in Ghana. And I knew that without him, there won't be any Kingsbridge. So I tried convincing him. Within 6 months, he eventually agreed to go in business with me. And that is, I would say, the backbone of why we are where we are. That is a challenge that you have to overcome to be able to really get a business to go, number one. The funding portion of things also comes from where presenting a business on paper really doesn't sell. It doesn't matter which part of the globe you are looking at. Half of the time, it gotta be a killer business plan before anyone will say, okay, let me, jump on it. But half of the time, most investors or funders or who are looking to back any new or startup business are looking for a track record or an action plan that has already started and yielding some traction. So I say that is another challenge we have to go through. And in my case, after doing about maybe close to a year of talking to folks I thought could help out in starting this business, and it never panned out, I was fortunate enough to be working for JP Morgan, where I dug into my 401k. And the amount I took out of my 401k wasn't even enough to get the business to start. So what I then have to do is, I was lucky enough to be an African, where I know my folks and how they think and what their expectations are and what they need in the country. So I started buying, salvage cars out of here, bought the parts they need with them, shipped them to Ghana, have them fixed, and sold them at premium. And that helped me to raise good enough capital to start Kingsbridge. So that was a challenge that most of the times a lot of us tend to hit a brick wall with. But in my case, I was lucky enough to have something called 401k and also have a good idea of how to, in a way, scale up that cash flow into a much sounding capital. So in a way, this is the two, challenges I will bring up. There is more, and I can go all day, but I don't want to take the time of the rest of my folks. So I will, pass it on, and when we start, answering questions, I'll be glad to do that.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Akorli. I work with Mission Resource International, and my father is David Ketchum, who is the founder and the president of Mission Resource International. Just about myself, I have had all my education in Ghana and still trying to educate myself, going through ACCA, which is a UK course, just like the CPA you have in the US here, still having some 2 papers to be able to complete. About Mission Resource International, we are a not-for-profit entity trying to help the underserved in society who in no way can they help themselves to be able to achieve a self-dependent status. These are people who will not be able to access funding either from the banks or from the micro finance companies because their creditworthiness might not be very good. So we are trying to help them, take them from the scratch and help them set up businesses and then continue to support them to be able to grow up to a level where they can become self-sustaining, be able to take care of themselves and their families, and also be able to impact on others. What is the reasoning behind this? Just assume that there are 10 million people all over the world. And it's only 1 million out of the 10 million that their economic status are good. There are two options here. Either the 1 million people who have to work to take care of all the remaining 9 million people who have nothing to do. In which case, I'm sure within a short time, everybody will break down. Or the 1 million people will be selfish, just take care of themselves and leave the remaining 9 million people in society, and all of us can tell the consequences. You can have all the money to yourself, but you will never have peace, because the remaining 9 million people have to look for ways to also survive. They can't be hungry and still want to be hungry and die. So they will come after you, the remaining 1 million people, and you can see their power will actually be more than yours. I have reached that status where I was just around 13 years. And I was attending school. My father didn't have it. My mother didn't have it. I had to work for myself to be able to get money to go to school. And it's not like the US where you can spend some time to work and go to school at the same time. I can only go to work on Saturday once in a week, sorry. And if I did not get money, what I do is to wake up early morning, go and climb coconut tree, steal coconut to take to school and go and eat. I'm glad today I no longer do that. So this is the rationale behind Mission Resource idea of trying to set up a microfinance, which is interest-free loan, to be able to help others who could not help themselves to achieve self-dependency status. Let's look at the impact of some of what Mission Resource has done to people and how it has affected others. We have set up about 39 businesses since starting our operation in 2004. And I just want to mention only one of them, because the biggest one, my father David has talked about it most of the time, and probably most of you have heard of it already. There's one called God Knows Why, which is a pharmacy shop that operates in the northern part of our country, which assesses a $9,000 loan from us. And today, that shop has been able to take care of themselves and their family, and they have today to help 2 students who have graduated from colleges and are yet to enter universities. And without that shop, there was no way those 2 people were going to have access to education. Nowhere, because their parents are poor. There's no way they could help them. Still, 2 people are still in college. Apart from the 2 who have graduated, 2 are still in colleges. Also, one will be graduating this year, and another one will also be graduating next year, just from that one business. This same business has adopted 2 children whose parents cannot just provide them food to eat. And these 2 children are living with the owners of this business. They are taking care of their food, their everything, and they are also going to school. Though they are in the junior high, they are not in college level yet. And apart from that, there are a lot of aged people in that community whose children cannot even take care of them. Their medical bills are issues for them. Some of these people die easily because they can't afford medical bills. And this business takes care of some of these aged people who cannot help themselves. Every year, paying for their medical bills. And 2011, which is the past year, this shop has spent over $4,000 in benevolence just to support other needy people in society. And that's exactly what Mission Resource wants to do. If you do this, it will help every single person in society to be able to get something to eat, which is better off than many of us living in society. Just a few can take care of themselves, and many are dying out of hunger, are dying out of disease. So that's the concept. What? The next question is the challenges we face, right?
Yeah, I guess one question I have for you is, you outlined a mission that you're trying to get your folks to participate in. What's your biggest challenge in getting them not only to take your money, but to take your idea of helping others as part of the business?
Yeah. There is a very big culture issues back in our country, which is very difficult, but our stand is to be able to help people, train people to be able to leave this bad aspect of the culture behind and take a modern approach to culture that will help people to grow. And that is the way we always do things. That's a part of the culture in my country. This is the way my forefathers have done things, and this is the way my fathers have done it, and this is the way I have come to see it done, and that's the way I'm going to do it. For example, in the US here, many businesses, even one-man business, will usually keep records of what he or she is doing to see where he stands today, and as time goes on, to see where he's standing and the prospect ahead of them. That is one major thing we lack in Ghana. Apart from the corporate entities, the small business people will not keep record of their activities. And so either the business is growing or the business is declining, they don't see it. So that is the major challenge with us when we started with them. We try to let them know this, but it is difficult for them to understand it because that's the way they have always do things. But we have been able to make sure that we set up a training system which we run every year, 2 times in every year. We do that in March every year and September every year, in which case we bring all our business clients together and the potential clients and give them training on some of these issues, the need for them to keep records of their activities, which guides them to know where they have started and where they have reached and where they are going to reach, looking at what they are doing. Another aspect of the challenge is the business entity concept, where under normal circumstances, a business must be different from the owner of that business. If you create a business, you yourself must be seen to be different from the business. But our case in Ghana is not like that. When I set up a business, everything is me. So I can just go and enter the business anytime, either goods or cash, draw for my personal use, give to my friends or whoever is in need, without even documenting anything. And so we try to give them training to understand that that way of running business definitely collapses the business. Because you think everything is yours. And the more you take out of the business, the more the business is going down. So you need to declare a salary for yourself, looking at the profit you are making, which you pay, and all your personal expenses should come from that salary, and any other thing you take from the business should be a borrowing which you have to pay back. Even though it is difficult from them from the onset, but as time goes on, we are overcoming it gradually, and people are beginning to pay salary for themselves. Another major issue we have with them is planning. People don't plan in Ghana. Apart from the corporate entities, the individual owners of businesses do not want to put any planning in place to see what they need to be doing to be growing the business. Maybe their inventory system for them to know every day, this is how much products I sell out of my business. And so this is how much product is left in the business. So in the next 2 days or 3 days, this product is going to get finished. I have to place an order for replenishment. People don't do that. So people can be selling, and they can only look for a way to replenish their stock when somebody comes to ask for product, and they can't find it. And we try to let them know that, hey, if you do that, that customer go to another shop and get a better deal there. he doesn't return to your shop again. You might not realize it, but it is gradually breaking down your store. So that's a big challenge for us. People do not want to plan, and planning is essential for the success of any business in this world. If you can't plan, there's no way that you are going to succeed, because things will begin to hit at you when you are not ready for those things to be hitting at you. One of other bigger challenge is the issue of openness, or being open to people, to us like this. We are helping people to do businesses with the motive that we are helping them to become self-sustaining. We are not taking anything from them. We are not taking any interest. We are not taking anything from their business, but we only want to help them to become successful and impact on society socially. But the understanding of some people is that probably, if they know we are making so much profit, they may want something from us. So, for example, if a business starts with a capital, maybe we give a business a capital of, say, $2,000, and it starts selling from the beginning just around, say, $1,000 a month. And that business is growing. Now that business is doing $10,000 a month. You go and he can tell you he's doing $2,000 a month. Why? Because the feeling is that if he tells you all that is going on in his business, you might have some interest of taking something out of the business. It's a very big challenge for us initially. But as we have worked over them for about 8 years now, and they still realize that no, that is not the purpose of which we stand for, now they are beginning to be open to us, telling us whatever is going on in the business. And so with our training, we want to improve on it, because we do it just one day in the month. And that means 2 days in a whole year. But we've realized that with the dynamics of business today, things are changing at every second. And so they need more than we are giving them now. So we are now planning that the 2 times training in a month, every one of them, we will do it between 3 to 5 days in a week. So at least we will have about 10 days training for them in the year. But the challenge here is the resource to do the training for them, because it requires a lot of money to be able to bring all of them together. We are spread across all the 9 regions out of the 10 that we have in the country, and you have to bring all those people at one point to give them training, and the cost of accommodating them is not that easy. So our planning now is to build a training center, which we have already acquired the land for. We are looking at around $120,000 to $140,000 project to put up a training center for them, in which case all of them can be brought together. They can have decent accommodation to stay there, and then we give them the training at a lower cost. And probably my prayer is that some of you one day also come down to Ghana and be involved in our training, to give training to these people, which will enable them to become world players in business, and to be able to impact better on people in our country. So we need all of your support in every way that we can help. Other donation to mission resource, to be able to give loan to people, to be able to support to people. It could be in cash, it could be in kind, or you come down physically and impart your knowledge to these people in our country. And you can easily do that with us by contacting my father, David Ketchum. I call him my father because he doesn't handle me like a boss. He's my boss, but he doesn't handle me like a boss. He handled me like a child, so I always call him a father. Thank you. God bless you.
leadership class, and none of us are an island. No man is an island. I know that's a cliche, but finding a good mentor, being a mentor, working in collaboration with others is the only way that you really can advance. Some of you guys are at the top of your class and all those kinds of things, and you will and have done very well. But and Kelly's known for his collaborations and team efforts and so forth. But I just really encourage that. And when you've been given something, in my opinion, you need to give back, in some form or another, and whether it's just teaching somebody what you know. And I'm from Columbus, Indiana. I'm a Hoosier, but I've just gone to Africa. I went to Africa in '84, established a relationship with my friend, in '87, and that's the people we're working with, people that we have a 25-year relationship with. So one other thing Emmanuel left out is that he visits each one of our business partners between every month and every 2 months. So it's not like we don't see these people but a couple times a year. He lives with them. So that's what's been helpful. And when you're working with people that you know and trust and within their networks, I have just as big a family in Ghana today as I have here in Indiana, and so it's just really a labor of love. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
It's on. You won't be able to hear it. It's just going into the video.
Oh, okay. So I talk about challenging heights and myself and how I've led this organization so far, and to discuss the example of how leadership has been cultivated within the context of the work that I do. I would say that the potential for me being a leader in my community was an emergent one. I see two kinds of leadership in this world: the one that is cultivated, and the other one which emerges. So that if we should group you into three classes, you will see that there's definitely one person who will emerge out naturally to want to direct things, and that person is a natural leader and emerges. That's the emergent leader. And then there's somebody who, by virtue of his or her privileged position, becomes a leader, and that's the cultivated leader. You are groomed and you are led to become a leader. Mine was an emerging one. I come from a community where I happen to be the only person or the first person who went beyond high school, and then became the first person who went to the university, and the first person who worked in the bank, and the first of everything, almost everything. And I come from a community where there was no electricity, where children would learn, but in the night cannot learn because there was no electricity. So definitely there was always the urgency for me to try to provide solution to the challenges that the community faced. And that started when I finished high school, where I realized that one of the major reasons why the children were not doing well in school was that there was no electricity. And therefore I had to mobilize the youth in the community, to mobilize resources for us to lead in providing electricity to this community. And to do that, you need the support of those around you. Because if you don't do that, you face resistance. Any leader who does not work towards mobilizing support from his own community or from his constituency, you are bound to face serious challenges. Because who is a leader if you don't have any followers? So that is how I did mobilize the youth, and within 2 years, we were able to bring electricity to the community. Now, one problem solved. Problem of access to electricity to learn was solved. Now, how do we then use this or leverage this facility that we have
to ensuring that every child who is of school-going age then go to school. And that is when the issue of challenging heights came. When finally I finished the university and got a job, and then I decided that, look, almost every single child in this community or youth in this community are seeing me as a role model. And I have always endeared myself to be the one that they can look up to. What can I do to open up the space for them to access the quality education that I want them to access, that the same quality education that I have also accessed? And that is, challenging heights. Creating the platform. So I always say challenging heights is not necessarily an organism. It's not an organization per se. In my own mindset, it's a platform. It's an idea. It's a mission. And once the mission is accomplished, that's it. Just like the way I mobilize the community to effect change in bringing electricity, when the mission of Challenging Heights is accomplished in the next decade or two, I'm out. So that is how I went about Challenging Heights. Now, Challenging Heights was established to rescue children from enslavement. The same circumstance that I found myself when I was a child, when I was enslaved, from the age of 6 working till the age of 13, being abused and denied any access, any opportunity to go to school, being abused and denied any opportunity to access medical care, being abused and denied any opportunity to even be heard. That same situation that I found myself in is what Challenging Heights is trying to correct. So we provide rescue services for these children, put them to rehabilitation centers, and make sure that they have medical care, they have at least basic literacy training, they have good nutrition, and they are taught how to protect their own rights. In doing so, we also have to make sure that the parents of these children knows that the children have rights and what the rights are and how to protect them in fighting against the exploitation of those children. And at the same time, making sure that we train the communities to know that the children have their own rights, because our Constitution enshrines that every one of us has some fundamental right, and there are laws that protect the children. So that is basically the work of Challenging Heights. In fact, the key amongst all the work that we do is education, because no one would take you for granted. No one would take me for granted because I know my right. And how do I know my right? I know my right because I'm educated. And I can read what it means to know my right. The laws, the conventions, and the policies that guarantees me my basic right. So education is key. As I speak to you now, we have a school, we have several models of schools. But one of our flagship school, which is Challenging High School, has 575 children at the moment, who are between the ages of 4 and 17. So that's a kind of work that we do. Now, in the context of this class, which is leadership and how I believe we tackle leadership, one of the challenges of leadership today is about sustainability. How do you sustain your ideas? Whatever I'm talking about is a cultivation of idea and making sure that the community have the services that they need. How do I sustain it? I have had a saying that a good leader is not the one who just leads and leaves and nothing works again. Then you are proud that, for me, if I'm not there, nothing works. No. That's not a good leader. I believe that a good leader is the one who, after leaving office, the one who comes after him or her perform better than himself. And that is sustainability. So that you create the environment, you create the steps, the framework, the structures to ensure that the one who will take over from you or who step into your shoes is better placed to deliver better than you yourself. So training comes in, mentorship comes in, integrity, and so on and so forth. That is what I believe in, and that is where Challenging Heights is heading towards. I always say that I have a few years left to stay with Challenging Heights because I have a number of survivors who are leaders in the organization. Our programs manager has been a beneficiary of our project and now is even more knowledgeable in what we do than myself. And I'm proud of it because that is what I define to be a good leader. See? So, yes, one of the most difficult challenges that we have faced is trying to be different. I'm glad that my brother touched on it. Trying to be different. Cultural norms. This is the way we have done things. This is the way my grandmother, my grandfather did it, and my father did it, and I have known this, and so this is the way everyone must go. And so when you, as a young person, you emerge from the community and you are trying to change things, you always face very stiff opposition. But that is then the challenge of a leader, the mark of a leader. How do you overcome the challenges that you face as you lead your group? And therefore, we have made it so far, trying to change the mindset where we started in a community where the enrollment rate in the school was about 20%. Now, regardless of all the challenges, the enrollment rate is over 90%. Regardless of all the challenges, where people will simply not save. When they get some resources, they will have to use all of them today or tomorrow. Now we have to change them, to change their mentality to ensure that you have to save for your future and save for your child. Investing in the future of yourself and for your education. And it was not easy. But then, that is where you have to bring on board everybody. Go down to the grassroots, eat with them, speak their language, and put on their own dresses. The dress that they put on, you also put on the same thing. Let them feel that you identify with them. Then, they themselves will know that when you speak, they will listen to you. Because when they listen to you, they get the results that they want. So that's Challenging Heights. I believe that I have the opportunity to answer a few questions. I narrowed my discussion to leadership because that is what it was meant to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions right now? Okay, I'll give you, go ahead.
Microfinance, so the 10 million person example seems like you're working with the 9 million, trying to extend credit to those people who might never have had that opportunity. But I was wondering what you thought of the role of leadership in government and in that 1 million and what needs to change or what they're doing right to help Ghana progress and integrate into the world.
Thank you. If I heard you right, you are saying what those who are benefiting from our loans, what is their role in government? Is that right?
Yeah. How do you feel about leadership in government in Ghana and how that works into this whole?
Well, leadership in our country has not been a very good one today. When I was a child, everybody was the neighbor's keeper. Before I was 15 years, I didn't know who is my father and who was my uncle, because everybody could discipline you for the wrong thing done. So morality in society was very high. But Ghana, as we are growing, things are changing to the extent that now leadership in our country is more focused on just getting yourself enriched and then becoming the boss of all other people and who must salute you. That's one bigger difference I see between Ghana and the US. When I got to the university here, I can't just imagine how the professors and the students can just stand and be chatting, as if they are brothers and sisters. It's wonderful. But in our country, the most part of it is that I am the boss. You need to salute to me. And that is the problem we have in our country, leadership of our country now, that is not allowing the younger generation, and especially the underprivileged, who even though God has endowed them with skill, they can never come up because they are suppressed. Our country our leadership have not given them the opportunity to be able to explore their talent and grow to a level where they can be the top field players. And that's what we are up to. That those that have been neglected, the people that are being pushed to the wall, the people that have no respect, we will go to them and work together with them like families, and then give them the play field to be able to explore their talent and then get to a higher level. Let me give you an example of one guy in my church who physically, he's very small, and appearance has not helped him, just like myself. So if you see him just like that, you will not give him any respect. But we were able to just support him to go to college, a Bible college actually. And then when he went there, one pastor looked at him and said, is this the best person in our church to be brought to the college? That the guy was telling me this, and the thing pained him so much. But as time went on in the college, he had a platform one day to preach at a Sunday. Unfortunately, that pastor who told him that was in the church that day. And after the guy preached, the pastor went to him and said, I have changed my mind about you. Can you imagine that if we have not given that guy the platform to grow up, nobody would have respected him. But because we gave him the platform to grow up, though somebody didn't respect him, when he spoke out, the knowledge that was in his mind was seen to be bigger than the physical person. That's what we are up to. But unfortunately, our leadership in our country are not doing that. All that our leadership is trying to do is just how to amass wealth for themselves, how to, be on top of power, so that if they say, hey, everybody must be falling down. I don't know if I answer you right, if there is a follow-up question.
Well, I think that I think he took it from a different point of view than maybe you were trying to ask. This is Emmanuel's first time out of Africa. He arrived Sunday, and so there's a lot of, he understands the Queen's English a lot better than he understands American English, and so sometimes he and I we have to repeat things as well. But I got to go to Ghana in '87, and it was basically a fascist country at the time. You couldn't buy any goods and services. I remember being taken to a governmental store, and there were 2 tires on a shelf and some 1950s Samsonite luggage, and that was it. And today you can purchase anything you can imagine there. Most of it's manufactured in China. I hate to say that, but maybe I shouldn't. But anyway, the government today, they have had great elections. They've handed over power 3 different times, different parties. In a way, their infrastructure is changed dramatically. You probably all know it's the fastest growing country in the world today. I think they've come a long way. There's still those things that Emmanuel's talking about. There's still levels of lining my own pocket before I'm going to help you type thing. But that's changing so rapidly. As the Millennium Challenge monies came into Ghana, there were different things attached to that for infrastructure and so forth, and it's a big difference that I've seen just in the last. I've been going there 3 to 6 months a year since 2004, and I personally have seen a lot of change. So I don't know if that is closer to your answer. And then also I'll let Raphael talk about the companies that are now coming into Ghana to do business that is making a huge difference as well.
And I'm just going to expand just a little bit on what both of my brothers have said. Like in answering to your question regarding governmental approach to microfinancing, lately it has come to question how microfinance serves as an economic backup to the country's growth. And I don't recall if I mentioned earlier, but here is a market that is, like I said, 80% untapped, and these are the huge segment of the Ghanaian economy that is looking up to the government for various assistances. And microfinance, a system, or I would say an area of commerce which tends to manage this underserved community, plays a huge role in a way freeing up resources that the government will apply to the underserved. So in a way, the government, or the current government, or in the past couple of years, have realized that their reliance on microfinancing really does help for them to more or less look at other bigger business approach like FDIs and stuff coming into the country. So in a way, we have been given some level of, in a way, regulated freedom to come into the market, be able to reach out and, touch the folks, the government, and, various traditional banking sectors will not have the room for. With that said, the government of Ghana has tasked the Central Bank of Ghana as well to come up with, regulatory systems that will help streamline the operational processes of some of these microfinance organizations, mine included. And I say that is because, in a way, for 5 years now, we as Kingsbridge, as we go about our business, growing steadily, is still very difficult. Getting additional fund injection into the business to help it grow and reach out and serve the community we are talking about. Why is that? Like we're talking about challenge and challenging leadership. Sometimes it all boils down to us not having all the credibility in place as an organization to sell ourselves to not only major financial players within the country, but also global microfinance investment vehicles out there. Now, with the involvement of Central Bank of Ghana coming into play, with the backing of the government of Ghana, they are now giving us licenses, which to the outside world will give us some level of credibility. But even aside from that, that could not be enough, because at the end of the day, for any microfinance to really reach out and grow much further and be able to serve the target market, the influx of overseas funding tends to play a major role. And with that said, as leadership in my organization for one, we then tends to look into organizations out here in the United States, in Europe and stuff. Some of them will then require us to show a track record, which sometimes you have to go by way of showing numbers that will help you to prove credibility. Another way of going about it is a good example with Kingsbridge Forum 1. In addition to the products we have in the market currently, we have added a student loan product where we are now issuing loans to university and college students in Ghana at almost the lowest pricing out there. And how did we do that? We went to bed with an organization out here in Seattle who signed a contract with us, and with their help, we are now accessing funding to these students at rates that are almost next to zero, to help them be able to accommodate, education as we will, like it to be. And with that said, that could be another way to go about, building credibility with microfinance agencies. It's something that red taping could play a role, where government, red taping can hold us back from even signing this contract. But because they know, that the governments know that there is the need for this market and the support from us to help this market grow, they in a way relax some of the regulatory prospects of making these businesses or alliances possible. So those are some of the tools being in place now to curb some of the challenges we face as organizations, especially in the microfinance world.
I guess this is for Raphael too. So you guys all obviously have a lot of love and compassion for Ghana and the people of Ghana. How do you separate, like, if someone defaults on a loan or can't pay you back, like, how do you separate the business side of things for, the compassion and love that you really have going on there?
I keep getting up and sitting down. I just ate a lot, so I'm glad I'm losing some of it. But talking of, default, for instance, we have an approach as an organization, and I know my brothers here also have, various approaches. At the end of the day, the bottom line for these, business is to reach out for our folks, get them out of, poverty, get them to, in my way, the way I look at it is be able to buy back their self-confidence. With that said, there are some of these clients who will come in with great business plans. However, like you said, default will set in with some of them. How did that happen? Sometimes it boils down to, the plan being presented could change somewhere along the line, or economic situations within the country could affect, the operational activities, which it will in turn cause some of these, issues, and by so doing, will then change the, financial structure being, planned into the business. There are several ways we as Kingsbridge, and I'm sure Mission Resource also apply in addressing some of these issues. We have one where we perform due diligence upfront before even funds are being disbursed to these clients. And the way, I'll give one example. One of the examples of how we go about it is during our due diligence performances, we investigate the family structure, which I am sure all my brothers have brought up, as to how the formation of this family is. What are the necessary post-business or behind-the-scenes necessities are, and try to incorporate that into their loan application. So let's say, you may come to me asking, for $1,000 worth of loan to, let's say, perform a business which apple for apple required $1,000. However, you may have maybe 1 or 2 kids out there who, in the course of running this business within the 3 to 6 months time frame being agreed upon, the kids also have to eat. Their tuition fees have to be taken care of, which most of the times, because a good friend of mine said, we Ghanaians are very tactical and half of the time not strategical. They look at the tactical approach and just come for the 1,000 without incorporating the family needs into the fold. So as we perform our due diligences, it helps us to know what the extra needs are. And by so doing, we can either decide to advise them on how to go about the business in order to sustain the business, like my brother James said, or top up their cash request. In this case, you could come in for 1,000, and then we may end up saying, okay, maybe 1,500 could be a much better capital for you. And then we will advise them on the reason why we are bumping up their loan, and then work around, how to, in a way, extend their loan term, in which case gives them the freedom to run their business strictly on the known capital and then use the surplus to manage the family. It helps them sustain the business and with time help them grow the business, but on our side of things too, in a way that helps us to maintain a much better payback rate as well. So as we do this, even though we have given them a higher amount, to other businesses or to other microfinance agencies, they will see it as a threat to their business, bottom line. To us, we are not looking at what we are making up front. We are looking at our clients winning in order for us to be able to keep, sustenance in check. So that's one of, the approach we use. Sometimes too, it could be where, even with all this said, like I said, there could be, currency fluctuation in the system which could affect the business in question, where let's say, gas price may shoot up on a small scale business person. It could affect the business in question. How do we tackle that? We have a system where we perform our collections on weekly basis. And as we do these collections, we are in their business on a weekly basis. So we know the ins and outs of their business. And by so doing, it helps us to know if a business have a potential of, sustaining itself, or there are traces of, struggles. And as that comes up, we then go back to the table, sit down with these, entrepreneurs or clients, advise them on what we are observing, what can we do to, improve upon the struggles they are facing. So in talking of leadership, these are some of also a way we go about leading our clients to a much better and sustainable approach in their businesses. Currently, we are enjoying a repayment rate of about 96%. And the reason for that is, some of these things we are talking about, we tend to perform a KYC, which is obviously knowing your client well enough and knowing their needs and their pains, and try to share or relate to their pains, which is exactly what Mission Resources are also good in doing.
Next question. Yep.
I guess this would be for any of you, or those of you that have worked in both the U.S. and in Ghana. What is the biggest difference, you would say, with like the business culture or like the ways you lead? Because, I'm pretty sure in the U.S. things have gotten a lot more fast-paced. I know Ghana's growing, but, is it more laid back there, or is it just as, kind of uptight, fast-moving, like business goes really fast, business deals are made, really quickly, or just I've heard different things about different cultures and how business is handled. What is the biggest difference, you would say, in that regard?
Who wants to volunteer? You want to talk?
Yeah, I guess I will volunteer. One of the, is it okay if I sit down? Yeah, okay, thank you. One of the differences that I've seen in terms of the way businesses are run in this country has been that there are strong systems and structures within which the businesses operate, and those systems and structures are respected by the employees and the leadership of those businesses, as opposed to in Ghana, where we have less structure and less systems, and even the one that exists do not get respected so much. Emmanuel started an example of our failure to differentiate between a business as an entity and the individual who founded the business. And this is because, yes, you may have the structures all right, but the person think that is my business is not so much different from me. So the systems and structures are not so respected. So in America, for instance, one can establish a business, hand it over to a manager, and go and do something else. And because of the respect for those structures and systems, the profit as anticipated, all things being equal, will be realized. And when I say all things being equal, means that barring any unforeseen circumstances, maybe natural cause or any other thing, no, the profit will be realized. Unlike in Ghana, if you establish your own business or even an organization, and I have established a lot of businesses in the past, and you leave thinking that the person who is in charge will do the right thing, you come back to almost restart the whole thing again. So those are the differences that I see.
I would agree with what he's saying. I'm kind of an entrepreneur and operated and started many businesses in Indiana, and I had a good mentor and taught me. They weren't. I worked for a Fortune 500 company as well, but most of our businesses have been, small caps and small businesses, mostly in the trucking industry. But we just have so many things in place to start a business here, and where you can start a business here by, registering in the state of Indiana and filing for a 501c3 or forming your corporation through your articles of incorporation in the state of Indiana. There are a lot of questions, and you walk into a governmental office in Ghana and there will just be stacks of paper. It's not computerized yet, and you may need to pay a fee to somebody to help you accomplish a goal. And whereas we can do it in just a few days or a few months, you're going to be several months to several years sometimes just in registering, or even determining whether to register or not to register. We went through that process. We've been looking at small to medium-sized businesses in Ghana, which we think may create greater impacts. And that's why Kelly's Glow-based program is working with us on a couple of projects. And we went around to the IRS. We went to the Ghana Investment Promotion, and we also went to Register General is what I was trying to think of. We kind of got different answers everywhere we went. So, so it's not nearly as straightforward as what we might find.
Yeah, one thing I also add about the difference between running business in the U.S. and that of Ghana is the time issue. I don't know if many of you are very much aware of what we call the Ghanaian time. You know that your clients or your customers will be at your shop by 6 o'clock. If the American knows the customer will be at the shop at 6 o'clock, he will be there before 6 o'clock. But the Ghanaian will probably wake up at 6 o'clock where the customers are already there waiting. So that's one difference between our situation and your situation.
And also, just to add a little bit to it, one thing I will attribute to, some of the differences also will stem from, in a way, I would say, even on paper, study-wise, we have time allocated to the study of rule of law within Ghana. However, is that practice? Lately, it has improved, but I would say 20 years ago, rule of law was very much, next to non-existence, if I should put it that way. In a way, the reason why I say this is, looking at the U.S., commerce activities, you have systems in place where, it helps us to self-police ourselves, number one. With regards to that, in a way, it does help us also to commercially know how to connect the dots from point A to point B, and how to, in a way, track accountability and also measure growth as a result of that. With the Ghanaian, business approach, it has changed though, because lately there have been a huge influx of, folks who have studied overseas, trying to apply the practical approach as they know it within the United States, UK, Asia, wherever there has been, development into the Ghanaian approach, and as a result, it's changing. But those were some of the attributes that may have caused differences between how business was done in Ghana compared to how it's done in the Western world. And a good example would be where, whilst working with a company like JP Morgan, for instance, I mean, I will be in New York, and real time I will be able to, be dealing with someone over, let's say, a $200 million deal. And because the company have systems and structures, like James said, in place, that will help us to, in real-time basis, know what we are dealing with, what we are doing. We are able to more or less connect those dots real-time and save time, be efficient that way. Whilst in Ghana, like Brother David said, there will be stacks of paper that someone has to go through. This stack of papers may have been sitting on this shelf for 10 years, collecting dust. And, let's say for me to go through and, be breathing in all the dust, you might need to maybe, tip me maybe $10 or so to really do that job. So these are some of the things in the past, it was very much pronounced. But lately, it has been, changing, and some of the changes are being attributed to, folks like us, ourselves, being able to export our learning from places like the US, UK, and stuff into Ghana to help efficiently manage what we do out there.
Thank you. I am afraid we have run out of time. Thank you. Can we have a round of applause for everybody?